About a year back, I had just gotten back from my shift, and it was about 2:15 a.m. by the time I got all of my stuff put away and changed into some comfortable clothes. I was an on-call guy, so I would be coming and leaving at random hours. I had trained my dog to wait by the door when she needed to go out and do her business, and by the time I walked back into my living room, she was whining, a sign that she couldn't wait any longer. As soon as I opened up the door to my backyard, she took off into the darkness, and I sat there looking at something on my phone. Probably Amazon, but I can't remember. It was taking her a little bit longer than it normally would have, so I got up and started headed out into the pitch black. It wasn't unusual for her to chase crickets and lose track of time, so every once in a while, I would have to go look for her so we could go back inside. When I had just left the back porch and onto the grass, I heard my dog yelp. I couldn't tell if she had been spooked or hurt, and my neighbors were real pieces of work, so I assumed they had been out messing around and threw something at her, which I'd had to yell at them for on a couple of other occasions. I ran out into the yard and barely saw her outline by the light of another neighbor's lanterns that was just strong enough for me to discern her from the shadows. She was crouched low in the back by the fence between my yard and my neighbor's yard, and as I got close to her, I saw that she was shaking pretty bad. I'm by no means a pushover. I am 6'1", and at this point, weigh around 270 pounds, but seeing her shaking like that made me immediately nervous. I've since lost 100 pounds and put on more muscle, but I still was not someone people would mess with. She was a German Shepherd, chow mix, and even though she wasn't as big as a typical shepherd, I seen her stand down some tough characters, so her being scared was a huge red flag. I tried to guide her towards the house, deciding to take a look at her and come back later to look for whatever had her so spooked. But as soon as I stepped towards her, she started growling and fixed her gaze on something to my left. I turned, and not 50 feet away on the other side of the fence was the biggest dog I have ever seen in my life. I could only see its outline because it was in between me and the lanterns, but the thing's head was barely below the 5-foot fence. We get coyotes around where I live, but this thing dwarfed them, and coyotes never went into people's backyards. They just wander around the streets, looking for trash or neighborhood stray cats. We all just stood there for a good 2 minutes before I came back to my senses and slowly reached for my dog's collar. I got a death grip on it. I pulled my dog around towards the house and took off at a dead sprint. My dog was hesitant at first, but once I got a distance between us and the back fence, it was like she broke out of a trance and she beat me to the back door. By the time I got there, she was whining, and when I flung open the back door, we both barreled into the living room and I double locked the door. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. She didn't go outside at night again the rest of her life. She was about 13 when this happened, and just passed a couple months ago. Aside from this night and a couple of other occasions, she lived a really happy life. I've looked up every big predator in the area. I live in Arizona, and have not found anything that resembles it. Has anybody got an idea of what it could have been? Hi, new to the Ghost Stories sub, but lifelong paranormal enthusiast. I've got loads to share, but I'll start off with recent experiences. First and foremost, trigger warning, suicide. As my title kinda points out, I lost my older brother in January 2021, and unfortunately, he took his own life, and I was the one to make the gruesome discovery. In therapy, doing the best I can. I'm also going to point out that I have a 2-year-old son who was very close with my brother. Obviously, being that he's 2, he doesn't understand death or anything like that, and honestly, my husband and I just never bring up the situation. Anyway, it was about 3 days after my brother passed, and my son and I were in our living room watching TV. My son was on the floor playing with his toys, and I was sitting on the couch a few feet away from him. Out of nowhere, my son runs up to me, pats me on the back in a reassuring manner and says, "Chris is okay, Mama," and just goes back playing with his toys. I wish there was someone else present when the sentence came out of my toddler's mouth, because I am sure the face I made was priceless. As I said before, 2 years old. We don't talk about what happened in front of him. He doesn't know any of the circumstances, other than his uncle was there when he was eating lunch one afternoon and then never saw him again. I've mentioned this to many people and they tell me it was my brother letting me know he was okay. A few weeks after he passed, I had a couple of friends over and we're talking about my brother. Can't remember the exact conversation, but it had to do with wrestling and a wrestler my brother didn't care for. I remember I was in mid-sentence talking about said wrestler when a wristwatch that had been sitting on top of my piano went flying off to the floor, leaving my already pale friends whiter than the snow that was outside. Aside from those two things, other activity that happens now is an array of electrical problems that suddenly started within a few days of my brother's passing. Brand new bedroom TV shuts off on its own. Living room TV likes to switch apps by itself and change the volume. Lights like to flicker, etc. And sometimes I swear I can hear my brother's music playing in my basement where there isn't any speakers. I wouldn't say I'm scared, but it definitely startles me when something I can't fully explain happens. I hope you guys enjoyed my story, and I'm curious to hear others' input, but be kind, because this is still a very sensitive topic for me to talk about. Hi. Not something I would usually do, but thought I would share a creepy experience I had about a year ago. I had just got to a friend's house to hang out for a bit. We talked in his garden for a while before moving inside. His dog was extremely excited to see me. He always runs around and won't sit down for a second when someone different comes to the house, jumping up and demanding attention. We had a coffee in his dining room near where we came in, before moving through to his lounge, with the dog following us, of course. His lounge was quiet, and all you could hear was the sound of the fridge a short distance away in the kitchen. Upon entering the room, I suddenly got a massive shiver down my spine, and said that it felt colder in here than the rest of the house. My friend gave me a generic answer, trying to find a reason for why that was the case. I then got another massive shiver down my back, and I noticed the dog had suddenly become less hyper, more focused and quiet. Mainly, he was staring directly at the door handle. I thought nothing of the shivers or the dog's unusual behavior in the moment, but I think subconsciously I clocked something was up. My friend turned on the TV and we watched something for a minute or two, but before I heard a loudish mechanical sound, which at first I thought was the fridge in the kitchen, I turned towards the source of the sound, which was the door, then turned back to the TV. Suddenly I realized that I had saw and turned my head back to the door to realize the door handle was slowly being pushed down, and that was the sound. It wasn't a fridge making strange sounds. It was the creaking of the door handle being pushed down. I watched it slowly go down for 2 seconds before I turned to my friend in shock to see him watching it too, in complete shock. Knowing nobody else was in the house, the dog sat watching it in silence the whole time. My friend suddenly jumped up, and as quick as he could, he opened the door. From this point, I don't recall seeing anything at the door from the angle of being next to it, but he claims to have saw a jacket move towards a coat rack, as if it had reached out to open the door. This friend has had his eyes play tricks on him before, so I'm not sure how much I believe is part of the story. But I know we were both reacting to the same thing. I tried the door handle after, and it required a lot of resistance in order to open it. And my friend said, that has never happened before. He then proceeded to tell me the previous owner of the house had died there, I was meant to stay over that night, but I was pretty freaked and ended up walking home. My friend seemed to dismiss what happened as a way of coping. All thoughts and questions are welcome. Hey, just joined the sub to post this because things are getting kinda out of hand and I'm not sure what to make of anything that's happened. I would like to start off by explaining that maybe now I used to be a skeptic regarding paranormal experiences, ghosts, demons, possessions, etc. But I can't honestly explain anything that's been happening to me or even why it started. So basically, the first weird thing that happened was the other evening after work. I was in my home office, and I sat on the ground in front of a wall mirror to tie up my hair. While brushing my hair, I found myself staring at myself. So much so that I felt like I was actually looking at another person and not myself. I felt like I stared so much that I went into a weird trance and couldn't break eye contact with myself. It kind of spooked me, but I was just like, whatever. It's probably like an optical illusion, etc. Then the knocks started. Knocks on our front door. I am not the only one hearing them, and there's never anyone there, and they're becoming more frequent. I put it down to the weather, except the other night was very mild with no wind, and the knocks happened again. The TV in our kitchen kept switching on after me manually switching it fully off. This happened twice on Saturday and yesterday. I woke up yesterday with scratches and dried blood on my throat. I wasn't wearing jewelry that could have caused it, and I literally have no length to my nails for me to have scratched myself. I also had bruises on my arms and legs. I woke up this morning and my body feels drained. I mean, achy and completely drained. I went for a nap on my lunch break, and I had a dream. I received an email. It was a good email regarding something positive. And when I got up from my nap and went back to my little office, I checked my emails, and there it was. The exact email from my dream. Can someone debunk this for me, or at least tell me what could possibly be happening? And how can I stop it? Thank you. Edit. My original post below is left as it is, but I'm just adding this tiny bit here. Please don't be mean to me, or assume I'm being anything other than genuine. I don't know where else to go to ask for help, and a friend suggested Reddit, so I'm asking this sub, as some of the things I'm experiencing could be otherworldly, but some can be rooted in the physical world, or my body/brain. I'm not looking for a cookie-cutter answer. I'm just asking for the opinions of those who from the sub have more knowledge in strange and unexplained happenings than I do, because that's what's happening, and that's what I need input or advice on. That's all. This just happened to me and one of my friends about half an hour ago as we were driving home from a movie. Nobody. Was pretty funny, I recommend it. Anyways, as we were driving, we come to a four-way intersection. Directly in front of us is the entrance to a public park. We take a left turn, and then continue to drive straight. We pass a gas station on our left, followed by a bookstore. I grew up in this area, so I know this scenery and this location like the back of my hand. We continue driving straight, and the next thing I remember, my friend points to our right and says, "Hey, isn't that the entrance to name of park?" I look at him dumbfounded. He's looking just as shocked as I am. Next I see the same gas station on our left, followed by the same bookstore. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before, and I'm still pretty shaken up about it. What I find is an odd detail is how, when the two of us saw the park entrance the first time, we were directly across from it. The second time we saw it, we were driving on the road perpendicular from where we saw it the first time. I wish I could explain in much more detail, as I have a couple wild theories that need more context. But regardless, It was a very chilling experience.